Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Minh N. I'm currently a teacher at University of Foreign Languages and International Studies, Vietnam National University. Today I'm going to present to you a study on cultural authenticity of folktale-based Chinese American picture books for multicultural education. This study was done by the first author, Nguyen, a PhD candidate, and me, a master degree student, and Professor Do Son at Korea University. Nguyen was a Chinese PhD candidate at the English Education Department at Korean University. Now she graduated already, and she did give me the permission to present this paper at VIC2020. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about the motivation for us to do the research. First of all, let's talk about multicultural education. There is a need for multicultural education as people, especially children, demand the opportunity to explore cultural heritages and values that can contribute to the rich ethnic diversity. And among cultural education means there is cultural literature. It plays a very important role in helping children to recognize other cultures around, to help them improve and increase their attitudes and awareness about cultural diversities. And among many multicultural literature genres are multicultural picture books. Picture books prove to be very effective, particularly for children, to shape their perspective of the world, facilitate their social and emotional growth, and enhance their multicultural competence. Among several kinds of multicultural picture books are Chinese American picture books. But Chinese American picture books are found to display the lack of cultural authenticity and misrepresent cultural factors in their text and illustrations. According to several studies of several scholars before, so this developed an inaccurate or wrong understanding or even negative stereotypes about other cultures. Let's imagine like Chinese American picture books are introduced to kids, to children in America, and they can be Chinese American, they can be Asian Americans, they can also be other American children which have different origins, right? So if Chinese American picture books represent a inaccurate image of Chinese people, then it would definitely be a disadvantage for those children to get to know the Chinese culture. Okay, according to two authors that have done a lot of studies about cultural authenticity, they believe that cultural authenticity can provide children with the chances to experience other cultures as they are and develop their accurate concepts about other cultures via picture books rather than cultural stereotypes and misrepresentation. So cultural authenticity is very important in picture books. And then this study will examine cultural authenticity of Chinese American picture books, but only four most popular ones among them. In particular, we will compare the text and their illustrations to the original stories that they are based on, the original folk tales that are recorded in ancient Chinese literature, to see whether they reflect, they have a accurate reflection on what is recorded in the ancient Chinese literature. First, let's look at some literature review. First of all, we need to understand what does it mean by cultural authenticity. Most scholars, after trying to get a proper definition of cultural authenticity, Short and Fox confirm that it is undefined, but you know it when you see it as an insider reading a book about your own culture. Mo and Shen also added that authenticity equals non-stereotype portrayals, positive images, lack of derogatory language, accurate historical information and cultural details, and realistic illustrations all put together. So combining a lot of definitions above, we, the researcher in this study, we adapt by the we adapt this definition to base on when we do the research. Cultural authenticity refers to the proper, accurate, and objective representation of the shared core values of a particular culture through both story text and illustrations. As I've said before, cultural authenticity is very important in enhancing multicultural education because cultural values, customs, beliefs, ideas, and perspectives, when they are conveyed by multicultural picture books, can open a path on which children can learn about themselves as well as others with different cultural backgrounds. So authentic picture books can serve as the windows through which children can see the world, while they often misrepresent the reality. So only when the lighting conditions are good can the windows turn into mirrors that can serve to reflect the real world without misrepresentations. Actually, this idea is from Bishop, right? Okay. Um, Although the cultural authenticity issue is very important, and there is some problems in with cultural authenticity in Chinese American picture books. Since several studies before demonstrated that Chinese American picture books are problematic, and those problems are confusion between Chinese and other Asian cultures, incomplete representation of China's contemporary situation, an overemphasis on Asian China. So many examples of unauthenticity and misrepresentation exist in Chinese American picture books, make this current study indispensable for multicultural education. We will study like only 4 picture books to see whether they have the same problems or not. Okay, how do we do the research? We chose 4 Chinese American picture books that meet 2 criteria. They are among the most popular folktale-based Chinese American picture books, and there are corresponding original folktales inherited in Asian Chinese literature. And here are the name of these 4 stories. I believe that if you are Vietnamese, you can find those stories quite familiar. For example, the first story we chose is Ye Shen, with the original folktale is Ye Xian, and it is actually a Cinderella story. The second story is Fa Mulan, and the third story is the Magic Paintbrush. Vietnamese people know this because we studied it in secondary school. And then the last one is Minh N Moves the Mountain, which has the original folktale named Yu Gong Moves the Mountain. Right. And we analyzed these 4 picture books based on a checklist. And this checklist is a combination, integration of several checklists offered by previous researchers. We analyze it based on 4 criteria. First of all, text, theme, illustrations, and language. Here come results. Here comes the results. First of all, when we analyze the text, we find some problems in the representation of story settings in those picture books. For example, no, the setting, first of all, we need to understand that the setting in picture books establishes the location of stories in time and place, and it also creates a mood, psychological and social, and serves to form historical, social, and ethnic backgrounds that provide clues to understand picture books' literary and symbolic meanings. So it's very important that the setting of the picture book must correspond to the original folktales so that the audience, the children can get a clear and accurate picture of the story. Both illustration and the text should function to clarify historical periods and contexts in which the stories are situated. But it is found that the 3 out of 4 picture books are problematic in terms of representing Chinese settings. Let's look at an example. The example I chose to present to you here is from the story Minh N Moves the Mountain. So this story, actually, the original folktale of this picture book, actually took place during the warring states of China, and the warring state. And let's look at the picture here. The picture on the left here the picture on the left here, this is the architecture style from the Warring States period. However, in the illustration of the picture book, it is like this. Okay. So this misrepresentation can cause readers mistakenly believe that the architectural styles in the illustrations are typical of China's entire Asian architecture, but it's not like that. It's only from the Warring States period, but there's no additional information about that. So the children or the readers may like mistake that the ancient architectural style of China is like that. It's like this one. Another story that has problems in story setting is Jason. In the picture book, the author says the story happened in southern China, and illustrations show the authentic clothing style of the Chuang minority. However, however, an authenticity problem arises from here because there are more ethnic minority groups are known to inhabit in the same southern China, not just the Chuang minority. And all these ethnic minority groups, they differ in their architectural styles, clothing style, religion beliefs, cultures, and values. So it's important that the story should like have some notes or or have some like guide to the readers about the Chuang minority. Because without information about the specific minority group characters would belong to, the readers may believe that the Chuang minority represent all people in southern China, which is not true. So this is also a cultural authenticity. The second criterion we look at is topic and themes. We all know that Chinese original folktale, they bear Chinese core values and Chinese beliefs as well. So Chinese American picture books are supposed to not only tell the so-called interesting stories, but they also should impart and convey their core Chinese themes, Chinese values in that. However, the stories that we analyze all have some problems with that. First of all, in Minh N Moves the Mountain, the original folktale represents the Taoist ideas of changing nature and using it appropriately to achieve a more harmonious environment, in which the main character is considered a hero to which believes that he can change nature, and his hope and his idea to achieve a more harmonious environment is well praised. However, in the Western in the Chinese American picture book, the main character turns to a man which is a little bit fool, so that a Western review of the picture book indicates that it would make a good addition to the full tales shelf. It actually misrepresents the themes and the ideas of the original folk stories by trivializing the values and in-depth messages embedded in the old man's determination and unending efforts into a foolish person's weird behaviors. Another story, Injection, original folktale the whole promotes the idea of being kind-hearted and as in the Cinderella story, but the ending promotes the idea that being greedy brings nothing. However, in the picture book Yesan, by omitting the ending, the story becomes too westernized and reduce the original folktale merely to a Western-style Cinderella story with minor Chinese elements only. Another story, Fa Mulan, original story conveys Confucian values of filial piety and sacrifice for parents and family. However, in the picture book, they pay more attention to a piece of romance, so in which the Chinese core cultural value of filial piety become less significant, and of course it will lose their central Chinese value. The last picture book is The Magic Paintbrush. So the original story, the original folktale focuses on the character persistent in practicing his hobby and following his dream after being insulted by the rich. So it reflects the historical context of the story, which was composed at a time when Chinese laborers were actually bullied by corrupt officials. However, in the picture book, the character did not live in the same setting. The character has parents, and she is suddenly given a paintbrush on the beach, so it's the picture book actually creates an atmosphere like entirely different from that in the original folktale. So the impact is lessened a little bit, not to say lessened a lot. The third problematic factor that we analyze relates to illustration. First of all, the character images, as you can see from the picture. Here are the illustration from Minh N Moves the Mountain, and on the left, on the right, you can see that the illustration, people illustration from the magic paintbrush, and both pictures reflect that Chinese people have slanted eyes. So it's once again poses a long-lasting detrimental influence on multicultural education for Chinese cultural outsiders. They will think that every single Chinese person has slanted eyes. Apart from the character images, there are several cultural art items that are misrepresented. For the first example is paper lanterns. So if you look at the right picture, it is actually the image of an Asian Chinese lantern, and it has the Chinese characters that mean good luck or good wishes, not the random Chinese characters or the names of individuals as we can see in the magic paintbrush. In the magic paintbrush, the illustration of the paper lantern here, we can see a name of a person here, but it's not true for ancient paper lanterns. Now, another cultural art item which is very problematic here is the emperor crown. The crown is actually a symbol of imperial power in ancient times, and we know that it differs in shape and style from dynasty to dynasty, but it never contains like a dragons or other patterns such as like tiger-like pattern, as seen in the picture book of the magic paintbrush here. It should look like this, right? The last criteria we look at is the problems in language. So it is found in all picture books. Very interesting fact that there is a bias towards the Cantonese language. You know, Chinese have several dialects, and the Mandarin is the most spoken language. However, there is another one which is very popular, especially in the Western area, which is the Cantonese language. But this bias can prevent young readers of other cultures from knowing the diversity of Chinese language and cultures. This is not really beneficial because Harper and Brand once claimed that multicultural picture books should reflect cultural linguistic context accurately. Although it is understandable that the majority of the readers of Chinese American picture books are cultural outsiders, and it's not expected that they can distinguish between Chinese dialects, and also Chinese American picture books would not aim at teaching Chinese dialects as well. But it is still worth indicating that those picture books can function as a tool to introduce and convey such wrong cultural linguistics information to children of other cultures. After a very detailed analysis of four most popular Chinese American picture books, we come to the conclusion. The very first one is that the findings are in line with previous studies about the problems of folktale-based Chinese American picture books in terms of cultural authenticity. We have several problems. First problem is misleading and incorrect representation of time and place in which the story took place, as demonstrated in the story of Minh N Moves the Mountain. Secondly, is the lack of information about the ethnic groups involved, as I previously analyzed to you about the story of Chuang minority in the Chinese Cinderella story. The third problem is the distortion of the cultural values and themes. In Chinese American picture book, they are become too westernized, with the inclusion of even a love story like the story of Fa Mulan. Another problem is the overgeneralization of a single instance as applying to all Chinese people. For example, they just those clothing style is just for the ethnic minority, but there's no note for that. The next problem is the misrepresentation of Chinese cultural items such as the lantern and the crown. Next one is the repeating stereotype about the physical appearance of Chinese people, the slanted small eyes. Second finding we conclude is that the four Chinese American picture books under this study are found to be too westernized and romantic, which could devalue the core Chinese cultural values conveyed by the original folktales. From those conclusions, we believe that there's something to, that the future authors and illustrators can do, and even teachers can do to improve multicultural education in class. First of all, for authors and illustrators, those who would like to create multicultural literature based on other cultural heritages, they are recommended to fully and thoroughly research and experience all elements of other cultures before they write one. And there's also some implication for EFL context setting as well, that the method of comparing the adapted version to original stories can be implemented in EFL classrooms to actually promote critical and multicultural thinking and competence. The folktale-based Chinese American picture books, as well as their corresponding originals, can function as a model to trigger such kind of discussion and multicultural classroom activities. So I hope that by the end of this presentation, the teachers who are interested in multicultural literature can have better ideas of choosing the materials for your classroom. Thank you for listening.